Is working with SERCO the secret to stress-free property income? Well, in this video, I'm going to give you my experience working with SERCO. I'm a property developer from Nottingham in England. I've got over 30 properties and I lease about 6 or 7 of them to SERCO. I actually work with 4 different social housing providers and SERCO is one of them. What are SERCO? What do they do? Who do they house? SERCO, they house asylum seekers, refugees, and vulnerable tenants. And a lot of landlords consider working with SERCO because they're kind of sick of having normal tenants, the normal headaches that you get with having a family living in the property that stopped paying rent, or you have tenants that are just damaging the property and you've got all these bills and maintenance issues. Landlords are getting sick and tired of that. And I think in the UK, the government is very, it's not very balanced. It's more in the tenant's favor. So for example, if a tenant doesn't pay rent, a lot of the times the landlord is pretty much screwed. So that's why a lot of landlords are considering working with SERCO. So the first time I worked with SERCO, it was a property that I purchased for £82,000. I renovated it and I gave it to SERCO as a HMO, so a house of multiple occupants. It was a 4-bedroom and I negotiated back and forth with them for around 3 months to actually get a good rate with them, because when I first reached out to them, the rate that they was actually offering me was super low. So I had to negotiate hard with them. It took me 3 months and eventually they agreed to pay me £420 per room for this HMO. So in the month, I think it was around £1,680. That's how much they was paying me for this first property. Anyway, it worked well, but I did learn a lot along the way, and I learned a lot what I'm going to share with you today on their process, their system, some things that they can improve on. But ultimately, that property is still with them, and I now have around 6 or 7 properties that are leased to them. So my initial impressions dealing with SERCO was that they've got a big team. There's lots of people you can contact and speak to. They have different sections within the company. So they have like the onboarding team, they have the acquisitions team. So there's lots of different sectors within SERCO. And you find a point of call, you can liaise with them. The person I was working with actually left SERCO halfway through. So then I had to get it signed off, the first property, with a different person within SERCO. But other first impressions I got is that the system was good, but I think it could be improved. So how it works is SERCO will give you a list of areas that they are currently taking on. It's called the procurement list. I can't really pronounce that, procurement list. They'll provide you with this. Once you have a point of call within SERCO, they'll give you this list. You take this list and then you basically find a deal. You find a property to buy. You could buy a property and give it to them, or you could do a rent to rent and give it to them. Me, I just focus on buying properties. So once you found a potential property in the area, you would then send them the full address. Once you've sent them the full address, they will give you a initial thumbs up or thumbs down. They'll say, yes, we can, take on this property. And once they've approved it on their systems, you can just go ahead and buy the property. Now they do give you, I believe it's 6 months to kind of get the whole deal done, like buy the property, and then they'll keep it on their systems for say 6 months. But you need to confirm that with them because that might change. So once it's on their systems, you proceed and buy the property, and then you get them out to the property to do an initial inspection. Once you've done that initial inspection, they'll tell you what you need to do on the property. They'll tell you, all the changes that you need to make, and you then would proceed and do all of those changes. They'll come out throughout the whole process, so they'll probably come out maybe 3 times. And I would recommend you get them out as much as possible because SERCO are quite strict. So, for example, HMO licensing in Nottinghamshire, the requirements might be here, but SERCO's requirements are even higher. They're even more strict than HMO licensing. Ultimately, this is a good thing because I think they're just trying to protect their tenants that they are housing. So I think it is a good thing, and it just means that you do have to do a bit more extra work, planning, and making sure that you're fully up to the SERCO's requirements. So let me give you a quick example on kind of things that SERCO want as opposed to what the council want. So the council in some areas in Nottinghamshire, they want the gaps between the fire doors to be 11 millimeters, but SERCO want it to be 4 millimeters. So what it means is you have to have a skilled tradesman that's supplying and fitting the doors to basically make sure that, you know, they're fitting them with the gaps being 4 mil or less. And they'll actually come round and check that every single door gap is less than 4 mil. So they are very strict. Things like this, I'm not used to things being that strict. So my builders got very annoyed at me, especially on the first project. They was like, wow, Luigi, this SERCO are taking the piss, you know, they were asking us to do this and this and this, it's costing us extra. But luckily, I've got a good relationship with my build team, so they absorbed the cost, all right? Now this is where your negotiation and your relationships with your builders is gonna come in, because you need to prepare your builders and say to them, look, here's the list of requirements that SERCO want, however, we might end up doing extra stuff. So you need to kind of get ready for some extras, and you need to kind of prepare on what you're gonna do. If extras crop up, what I'd recommend you do is get a detailed written quote from the build team, and on the quote, it needs to say the property must be handed over to you and it must say the property must meet SERCO's requirements. That will kind of give you a safety buffer, okay? But I do think you should be very transparent with the builders and tell them the situation. You know, say to them, look, SERCO are strict. So just be transparent and just let them know that, okay? Now, once SERCO are happy, what they will do is they would actually instruct a FRA. Now, an FRA stands for a fire risk assessment. So SERCO will send their own fire risk assessor to the property. They will do the assessment and then they will send you the report. Usually takes about 10 days. And once you have this report, you would then do all of the works that they are asking. So anything that's a priority action, you will need to do that. You can't really negotiate with them on this. One time, SERCO did some of the works, but in general, you're gonna have to do all of the works, okay? You're gonna need to make it perfect before you hand it over to them, all right? So once you've done that, you've satisfied the points on the fire risk assessment, then you provide your bank details to SERCO. You need to do it on a written letter-headed document with your bank details on, and then they would set you up as a landlord profile. For me, I've got all of my properties, pretty much all of them are in different company names. So for me, I've got like loads of profiles on there with SERCO, and each time I do a new purchase, I have to basically provide the new bank details and set myself up again. So it's easy to do, but just make sure you're on top of it. Make sure that you get it done fast and quick, and you don't wait until just don't leave it last minute. That's what I would say, because it can take a couple of weeks. I've had some projects before where I've been like 3 weeks or 4 weeks delayed in getting paid, just because I wasn't fast enough providing the bank details to SERCO and chasing them up. So if things get missed with SERCO, you are going to need to chase them up, all right? Or in general, they are pretty good with most things. Now, one other thing that you might kind of face with SERCO is inspections. For example, if you need to get your property valued, it can be a bit annoying to get the bank valuer to come out. You have to liaise with SERCO, with their team. Sometimes they're very, very busy. Sometimes they don't make it that easy for you to actually get your valuation done. So that can be another difficult situation that you're going to have to be mentally prepared for. But yeah, let's talk about the good sides. So they pay the exact same amount every single month on the same day of each month. So you know exactly how much profit you're going to make every month. There's 0 void periods. You do get that guaranteed rent. So unlike a working professional HMO, for example, where you've got people moving in and out, with SERCO and other social housing providers I work with, you don't have that same issue. They deal with all of the tenants, and even if it's a 6-bed HMO, say 4 bedrooms are tenanted, and SERCO have got tenants in 4 of them, but 2 of them are empty, you still get paid for all 6. So that's very, very unlike working professional HMOs, okay? So it's completely hands-off, all right? Meaning you're not going to have to get involved in any maintenance issues, any tenant management issues. you're not going to have to get involved. So, the 6 or 7 that I've got with SERCO, it is very, very passive income for me. And I will say that is a massive, massive selling point of working with SERCO. The fact that it's extremely hands-off and extremely passive is perfect for me. It actually allows me to live in Dubai. So right now I'm in Dubai. I'm actually on the rooftop of my building that I live in. So it just shows you can, structure things with your property business where it can be very, very hands-off. So they actually give you a long lease. So with SERCO, it's 7 years. The lease is 7 years. And again, that's a big plus point because you know exactly how much you're going to make for the next 7 years. Now, some people do ask me, can you build in a rent increase? So, with some providers, you can build in a rent increase of say 5% annually. With SERCO, I've not managed to negotiate that. Maybe you have, and you've had that built into the contract. I've not had the privilege of getting them to agree to that. Believe me, I've tried my hardest, but they never agreed to it. So another benefit is you're not going to be chasing any tenants to pay their rent because SERCO, they always pay, in my experience. Predictable cash flow. We said this before, but it's very good for you as a landlord to know you're going to make X amount on this date, on each month. So you can plan ahead, it helps you with your portfolio. But when it comes to the actual price of the rent, I'm going to tell you, SERCO will typically pay you slightly less than market rent if it is for a HMO property. So I'll give you an example. In Nottinghamshire, in an area called Mansfield, they was taking on this area. I'm not sure if they currently are right now, but I've got some properties in Mansfield that I gave to SERCO. The market rent for a HMO, like the market rate you can get, is roughly around £450 per room per month for a working professional tenant. Now SERCO, they agreed to pay me £420 per month. So you can see it's £30 per month per room less than the market rate for a working professional. So they're actually paying below market value rates. However, because they cover all of the bills, they cover all of the maintenance, you have a long lease, what it means is you're going to get that consistent income, okay? And it means you end up with more money at the end of the month and the end of the year when you do the calculations, even though they pay less than the market rate, okay? Because for those of you that have got properties, you know what it's like. You have one major repair in your property in a month, it wipes out your profit for the whole month, all right? So over the year, you do the maths and you're like, oh, okay, so I've made way more money the fact that it is with a provider, even though they pay less than market rate. One other thing as well is exiting. So for some people, buying a property that's leased to SERCO will be very attractive. I've had so many offers on people trying to buy some of my SERCO properties from me. But you could even argue and say that there's less people that want SERCO properties to buy because maybe they don't understand how good it is or how profitable it is for you to buy a property that's already leased to SERCO. Some people won't understand that, so you might argue and say you would get less buyers if you ever needed to sell the property. But for me, in my situation, it's been fine because I have a big network of property investors. People, are always trying to buy some of my HMOs from me. So tips for landlords that are considering SERCO. I would say find out what SERCO need at the time. So don't just go out there and try and find a deal to give to them and hope they'll take it on. You actually need to speak with them, reach out to them and find out what they are looking for at the time, what type of properties, find out their rent settings and what areas they are wanting to take on properties in. Find out the rent settings, find out how much they're going to pay and then negotiate with them. Don't be afraid to negotiate with SERCO or any other provider. Okay, there's definitely room for negotiation. A lot of the time SERCO will just tell new customers, new landlords that they'll pay LHA plus 20% or plus 30%. In my opinion, you can negotiate with them, okay? So do it. Make sure you negotiate hard with SERCO. Okay, they even have specific property negotiators. Okay, so they understand how it works and they've got a whole team for that. Another thing I would say is definitely shop around. Like, don't just go for the low-hanging fruit. Try and really see what other providers are out there, what they'll pay, and just shop around basically. You know, it might make sense for me to go with SERCO for some of my properties, but for you, you might be in a very high value area and it just doesn't make sense. The numbers just don't make sense for you to lease it to them, or maybe to a different provider, it makes a lot of sense. So I would say it's all case by case. I would also say ask them loads of questions. So if you're looking to work with SERCO, ask them questions, get clarity. Don't just watch this video and base everything off this. Speak with them, because things are always changing. Their systems change, their processes change. So it's important that you really have that good communication with them and just speak with them and just ask them all the difficult questions that you might have. So just to summarize, I'm very glad that I built the relationship with SERCO and gave them properties. All in all, it has been a positive experience. Compared with my other providers, I would say they are strict. They're definitely the strictest provider I've ever worked with. However, they are the most aggressive in terms of taking on properties. And for me, especially when I was scaling up, there was 1 year where I purchased 13 properties in 1 year. I needed that kind of provider on board where I could just keep on giving them properties. I had peace of mind knowing they was going to take them on. They looked after me, they paid me a good rate. And yes, there had been bumps in the road. But all in all, it's been 100% worth working with them, okay? So as I said, there's 4 providers in total that I work with, SERCO being one of them. I would say they are the best. Wait. I'm gonna say them and another provider, quite a smaller provider, are the best. These 2 providers are the best. I don't wanna say the name of the other provider just for, I guess, security and privacy reasons, but they are on par with that provider. So I have 2 favorite providers and then 2 that I still like, but they're not as good. SERCO are definitely tying that #1 spot with the other provider. So yeah. So if you need help with your property journey and you want me as your mentor, then all you need to do, guys, is go to the description of this video, okay? You can find out more on what it's like working with myself. I have a training and mentorship program, and I am taking on new mentees at the moment. So click on the link, find out, book in a call with my team. They'll run through everything with you and see if it's the right fit for yourself. Okay, but without further ado, guys, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for next week's video, and I'll see you all very soon.